Hey folks, thanks for joining me for this episode from the Embellish Pod. If you got here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully I can be found on any podcasting platform that exists. And if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com and I'll try to get that taken care of. You can also find video versions of this podcast on YouTube. You can find all of my links on Instagram at embellishpod or TikTok with the same handle. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. This is a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. Today I have Monique joining me from Lucas Bols, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Bols 1575, as well as a handful of other items. And hope you guys enjoy this conversation because I sure did. Thank you for joining us whenever you happen to be consuming this particular podcast. This morning, I have Monique joining me from Bols, from Lucas Bols specifically, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the Blue 1575. But before we kind of hop into that, if you would, kind of just give me the elevator speech on who you are.
Oh, my. I'm Monique de Kortenaar, so there you have my last name. I'm the master distiller of the Lucas Bols company. Well, of course, one of our brands is Bols. We also do Damrak and some other brands like Galliano and Partida. I work in the city center in our distillery, which you can see at the background. It's a really tiny distillery. It only has 3 stills, so we make the heart of a lot of products for Lucas Bols. And I'm the master distiller and distillery manager. So I need to make sure that everything goes well.
Perfect. Well, so you're the head distiller of what is a 450-year-old company.
Yes.
Most people don't kind of set out as a career path like, hey, I want to become this. So you came in through a series of different things. You've got chemistry and quality management and maybe even some stuff with supermarket chains. I guess, is there any particular part of your path that prepared you well, or was it maybe the whole path that prepared you well for becoming the head of such a historical company?
I think each part actually helped. Mm-hmm. For instance, you mentioned the grocery store chain. That was not the job I actually prefer to have at first. But actually, when I look back, I was a quality coordinator there. I did a lot of sensory tests on products as well. So I learned a lot about legislation, regulations, which also helps in the work I do now again, even though I didn't like it as much as the rest, as product development or things like that. But it did help, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and you sort of touched on that. Maybe you can expand a little bit. Being a quality manager, you're really just kind of assessing what someone else has done, and then kind of shifting into a role like you're in now. You're maybe the mind behind, or at least a part of the minds behind, creative decision making. What is that transition sort of like, going from saying, this is good or bad to this is what we want to do, and then subsequently have to decide if it's good or bad, right? You still have to do that part, but going to the creative side seems maybe more difficult.
Well, I was already in the creative side before because I worked as a product developer beverages already for 8 years before. I also was a sensory panel leader, so I was used to test certain products, but also make certain products. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think that blended well with each other. Apparently my nose is really well developed and it has to do, I think, mainly because of the genes I got from my granddad, who was a perfumer. So that also helps. But at the end, it's also a team effort. So I always test with at least one of the distillers on the floor. If we do, for instance, barrel aging and we're doing a new blend, we even have like a whole team that blind tests the blends that I've made. So it's never a one person decision. Of course, I have like a big, how do you say, like effect on it. Like I can do like a final decision, but of course, I'm never doing just what I think. So it's actually a team effort. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It sounds like you're gonna look for consensus, but you're at the end of the day, your name's going to be the one that's affiliated with it, and you kind of have the more weighting in the decision. But and you said this just a second ago. You may have inherited some genes from your grandfather who was a perfumer.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that beyond genetics, right? Growing up around grandparents, and maybe you had access to some knowledge or some gathering, because I've talked to at least one other distiller that kind of made the transition into thinking about perfuming beyond just kind of smelling liquors. They were really looking at starting a perfume line specifically. Is there anything that came from childhood that you were able to bring forward that's not necessarily genetics?
Well, the interest was there for sure. When my grandfather died, I got all of his study books from perfumery. So there's a lot of overlap, especially in botanical side and the flower side. When I was a child, I was like running around the house, like taking rose petals and putting it in water because I thought that would make perfume. So I've been experimenting like from when I was young. So if it didn't work out, that's another thing. But like, yeah.
Well, it made a scented water, but it may not have been exactly what you were looking for, right?
No.
We can talk a little bit specifically about the product, right? And so, we've got the Blue 1575, which is a Curacao that you guys are making. Kind of tell me about this particular product launch.
Yeah, so of course it was also a celebration of our 450 years anniversary. Blue is, well, I think it's even the most popular liqueur in our range, but at least one of the popular. It was already the first one. It was already made developed in 1933, so quite a while ago, and it also shows like our heritage in distillation and in making these kind of products. We started back in the days in 1575 with liqueurs, and orange was one of the first ones we started with because it was an easy one. Like oranges were easy to, actually get from all the countries. So I think it was a good one to make like another version of in that sense.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make, right? Because there's the blue line and there's the Blue 1575, which is kind of this homage almost, and it feels like because you guys have been around with a blue like this for decades, but it feels like there's a moment in cocktail culture that is kind of happening right now. Where there's new interest or maybe revive interest in liqueurs and making upscale drinks. People are drinking, maybe they're drinking less alcohol, but they're more interested in having an experience with it. And so, do you think that is there any difference in how a product like the Blue 1575 is being used today versus the Blue from 20 years ago, as far as bartenders or cocktail culture?
I think there is a difference because of the modern type of drinks we do now, but I think there's also an overlap because you see that in some areas, also the tiki cocktails are a bit coming back for a while now, and I think that's where they used to use the blue for as well. But because this one has some added botanicals, a bit of rum, I think it's more versatile and it has more depth. So I think it's more, versatile to use in different types of drinks.
Yeah, and it feels like at least maybe 20 or 30 years ago that a product like this was really just used to make something blue, right? You're going to add a couple of flavors to it, which is usually pretty friendly. The orange flavor is pretty friendly to a lot of the fruitier drinks. But this product feels a little bit more intentional, a little bit more craftsmanship maybe behind it. And you mentioned there's some things that are a little bit different. Can you walk me through a little bit about what actually goes into creating this particular or crafting this particular version of it that kind of differentiates it? I know you said kind of rum and a little bit, but maybe a little deeper dive on that.
Yeah, so we started with actually with the same base as the original blue, which we still have, by the way, as well.
Mhm.
But we added some cardamom, vanilla, grains of paradise, and a bit of rum to give it a more like island feel, almost like more tropical, even. Or yeah, also of course really handy if you're making tiki cocktails, I think, because you already have a bit of the vibe. So we did like maceration, so extractions of these botanicals, and we did try some other botanicals as well, like clove. But we noticed because we were able to do tests, because we also have the bartender academy, so the cocktail academy, and the experience. So we were able to test some versions before we actually found the final recipe with some different botanicals and different like ratios and stuff. And this worked the best, and we were really happy with the outcome.
So if I'm wanting to kind of understand, because a lot of at least a lot of Western drinkers, a lot of American drinkers are coming to a thing like a curacao as just kind of a thing that you pull off of the cheap part of the shelf and you kind of mix up your drinks or whatever. If I'm trying to understand kind of the true value of something like Blue 1575, what's the best way to drink this? Is there a cocktail that I should try? Like this is the way that I know that I'm going to kind of understand the upscale nature of what I have here.
Well, I think my colleague Ivar can help you out with that more, because he's the master bartender. I'm,
Mhm.
of course, not making cocktails all day. I'm more focusing on the spirits. We do have a twist on the Blue Hawaiian that
Mhm.
actually was created with the Bols Blue at the time. So think of some pineapple juice. And yeah, I don't know the exact recipe by
Right.
heart. Like I said, I'm not a bartender, but yeah, I think if you look up the Hawaiian, you could be able. And I prefer actually, because they use vodka as well. But I prefer actually personally mezcal as like the
Mhm.
spirit next to it.
Yeah, and so I will say there's an abundance of recipes on the Bowls website that you can kind of go and you
Yeah.
can filter down to which spirit you're specifically looking for. So you want to filter to the the blue or the blue 1575, and you kind of understand those cocktails, which is really really helpful for a person who doesn't know a ton about blue curacao and what it is. I guess as you guys are kind of launching this product into the marketplace, or it has already been launched. I'm not exactly sure of the timing on it. Um, what was the thing that said, "Hey, we want to attack bringing forward kind of this celebratory round"? Is it just a marketing idea, or was it you were trying to pay homage to a thing? Like what made this become a thing?
It was, I think, a mixture of those things, but it was mainly the timing was because of the 450 anniversary. So it was an homage. Yeah, in the year that we actually had a celebration as well. Um, so that made sense for us.
Mhm.
But yeah.
So in blue or the Bowls products specifically are sold kind of worldwide. You're based out of Amsterdam, I think. Is that correct?
Yep.
Um, Regionality can have impact on people's flavor profiles and things that they like based off of the culture that they kind of grow up in. How do you balance creating products for like a global market, but also making sure that the region that you represent is still there as well?
Well, luckily we have people all over the world that are like working for us and helping us out. And also in the Bulls experience, like I mentioned, we have tourists also coming from every country. So we also did some tests among those people to see how different people would react to the products.
So I guess as you're developing this, what does the development timeline look like, right? So you have an idea, you make the thing, you test it out. Like, kind of walk me through from the day that the person said, "Hey, here's the thing we're going to do," to the day that you have kind of your first bottle.
Yeah, so it was, of course, the liquid next to the packaging, because also the packaging is now different for the new blue, for the blue 1575. So that started a bit like in parallel. So people were working on that. We had a project team that we actually looked at, and we had some ideas already. How is it going to look on the packaging side? Also the marketing. How are we going to put the visuals? How is it going to look? And then also what the liquid. So it was a bit in parallel. So we were also involved in the packaging, but at the same time we had to start with making the liquid, of course. And we did that also with the team. So it's not just me. We have our research and development team at the head office as well. So the thing was, because we already had the distillations of the Valencia and the Curacao peels, which are the orange parts in the blue, which is already done in the distillery. But we had to, of course, create more depth. We wanted to give it a more island feel. So we did a lot of tests in the distillery with making the macerations, trying again, trying different botanicals, trying out in the bartender academy or the cocktail academy in the House of Bols. So I think for sure a year we were working. I think it was even longer. I said last time I got the question, I think I said like 1.5 years. I'm not sure, but it was at least a year. Yeah, all everything by yeah.
Yeah, and not having to have a barrel aged product in this particular situation makes things a little bit faster, but it's still going to be a process. And you've mentioned a lot of different ingredients, and you may not be able to answer this, but as you developed this particular new flavor profile, you mentioned you tried clove, and maybe that thing didn't work out. Were there any things that kind of came out of the testing of what you wanted to do with this version that didn't work for this line, but you thought, hey, I'm going to save this for later, and we're going to make another product based off of this idea?
I always get ideas in my head when I'm working on stuff. So yeah, it might. We work a lot with botanicals, so it's always nice to be able to have those tests and to have those results, and seeing with the test how it works out.
Yeah, and working with botanicals, I guess, can be tricky, right? Because your flavor or aroma concentration may be different from one to the next, just based off of how it was grown, how it was handled, or whatever. It feels like the consistency and quality would be difficult when you're making thousands of bottles versus small batches. How do you guys maintain having a standard product that this bottle that you have today and the bottle that you have in 4 years tastes the same?
In general, to keep it like consistent, I think on the botanical side, I agree. Like if you use really like fresh spices and herbs, citrus, then you have a big challenge, because it's difficult to keep it good. So for instance, for the citrus peel, we actually use dried material, and we have 2 suppliers actually that for us focus on the quality and not the country where it comes from. So it can be that one time it comes from Spain and the next time it comes from Turkey, because that quality is the quality that we want. So if people ask like which country do the orange peels come from, I can't give you an answer if I looked into the specification of that batch. But I don't know upfront there's no certain country that we get it from. So we're focusing really on those aspects. And of course, there's stability tests being done before we even launch anything. So you can think of really extensive, maybe even overly exposure to light and to warmth, just to see how stable it is.
And it seems like it seems like a process that it comes out of a person who's got a background in quality assurance, making sure that you have the same thing over and over again. And in this particular version, there's also some rum in here. How do you go about, or I guess, what did you do to source the rum, or do you guys make the rum yourself?
No, we don't make the rum ourselves. I wish we did. But no, we have like an importer that actually is the biggest, at least here in the Netherlands, but I think even in Europe, that sources really good rum. And I know from experience that their quality is always up to date. So yeah, I'm not worried about that. So we have a good, how do you say, like, company that provides this to us. And I was able actually to go and test on their lab which one I preferred and which one worked better with the things that we were planning. And the funny thing is, I trust the guy that actually I was in contact with, because he used to be a classmate of mine.
That's definitely always helpful.
Yeah.
As you're dealing with botanicals, right? You're immediately hit. The first thing you deal with on a botanical is probably the scent that you're hit there first. Then there's a flavor, and then there's kind of the thing that it leaves behind. Which of these things, and it may be by botanical type, but like for the blue that you make, is the aroma of orange or the flavor of orange more important, or do they kind of walk hand in hand, or any of the botanicals that might go in there?
It's, I think, the complete package. But of course, like, if I'm starting with like a product development, for me it starts first on the nose. So if I don't like anything, just on smelling, it will be already set aside. So I start from there, and of course then you have to do like the tasting and to see like the complete blending. But I start like with the separate botanicals and the separate extracts and distillates that I use. And then I'm going to check if it works together, also by smelling, and the taste, of course, is the next step. And also you need, for liqueurs, of course, you need to figure out what the sugar level has to be as well. Because if you do like a really low, well, of course, with liqueurs you have a minimum. But if you, for instance, use the minimum of the sugar level that you're allowed to with liqueurs, it might not work with the warmth of the spices or the freshness of some of the peels. So yeah, it's like step by step, actually.
So in maybe one more question on botanicals, and then I'll shift a little bit. In the world of botanicals and things that you can add into this, there's a whole lot of things that are out there. Is there any particular kind of botanical that you've come across that you haven't been able to work into any kind of a liqueur or liquor blend that you kind of are keeping in your hip pocket that you're like, I want to eventually include this particular thing?
I cannot say which one it is because I'm actually working with it at the time for another product. But I can say it's a product that we that they use in the perfume side as well, and we have been using it in a really tiny dose somewhere. But I think it got lost a bit in the mixture, and I think it's a shame. So I cannot say now what it is, but yes.
Understand completely. You keep the things to yourself until you're ready to show the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And I ask that question because, regionally here in the part of Kentucky that I'm from, we had a crop that was pretty big during the Great Depression called sorghum, and it was cane sorghum, and you can make a syrup molasses type thing out of it, but it also has a grain head, so you could technically make whiskey or beer out of it. But I haven't seen anybody make like a really good rum type beverage out of it, and I keep wanting someone to do it. And so, it's one of the things that stays in my brain, and I know that people who do this for a living probably have those things as well. And shifting a little bit, but still kind of talking about the botanicals, sustainability is a big thing in most markets across the world. What is do you have an approach to sustainability and production around your botanicals or anything else that you guys are doing?
Yeah, we're actually within the company. We have a big project running as well. In case of the Blue 1575, we also lowered already the amount of glass, so it's like a lighter bottle. That's also part of the whole ESG story, um, which we have to do now as well. Actually, it's coming in a few coming years in the at least in Europe. On the botanical side, actually, when I look, for instance, at the orange peels, um, you have like some oils coming off, like in the heads or like tails. That there might be some interesting notes that you won't use for the products, and that you can actually use for other products. Sometimes we can recycle some of the botanicals and like do an extra extraction. Um, and we have like a bio kind of company that actually takes our botanicals. So we have different containers where we actually collect everything after using, and they recycle it. Also, the heads and the tails are recycled into cleaning material by another company that actually collects it from us. So we try to do as much as we can at this moment, but we're still looking into doing more.
Yeah, and I work in the ag space, and so sustainability is kind of a buzzword on a regular
Yeah.
basis for us. And without giving anything away, I already kind of asked one question that walked on the edge of that. Is there anything that you guys have in development that you're excited about, or is there any places where you see Bowls going and pushing boundaries kind of next, right? Because you're revisiting this really, kind of long lasting blue that you make, right?
Mhm.
Are you going to continue doing this with other things, or are you guys just kind of focusing on what you have right now plus this new product line?
I think this focus, of course, will be still on the existing products. But yeah, there are some nice, at least one product that I'm working on that actually was the one that involved the other question.
Gotcha.
And I hope that will be more innovating on that, yeah, in that area, in that product group, let's say.
And so I won't ask any more questions about future
Yeah, I'm
product
sorry.
development. I promise. No. It's perfectly fine. This is we'll ask the questions, but I don't want to push up against it too much. Um, you know, talking to I've talked to a lot of distillers over time, and you talk to from the large scale industrial type organizations down to the craft distillers. The technology behind distillation is changing, but the changes really are about efficiency more than anything. And
Mhm.
at least from my understanding, in the liqueur world, you're less concerned with efficiency and more concerned with what can you get out of it, the flavor compounds, right? You're not trying to make a neutral grain spirit. You're trying to get these particular things. Is there anything that is changing within distilling methods specific to how Bowls operates that is interesting to you?
At this point, I think because we are doing actually the heart of the product, so we're doing quite concentrated products already.
Mhm.
We try to actually get as much flavor. So we actually work the most with the pot stills you see in the picture behind me. Um, I don't think like we could be doing vacuum distillation, but we actually are not even able to put like a big new still in our. If you ever been to our distillery, you know that it's really tiny. We
Mhm.
only have three stills. One is 100 liters, one is 250, and one is 500, and
Mhm.
that's a maximum volume we're actually allowed to have because we're in the city center of Amsterdam. So we're actually lucky that we can even
Mhm.
produce in the city center of Amsterdam. So if we would to be doing that, it would be like probably an external location, but at this point, we did some tests on smaller amounts. And we noticed that with the stills we have, it still works the best for now. We might be in the future finding something else that works and we can change some things. But at this point, yeah, the pot stills actually work for us.
Mhm.
With extraction, we do have some different ways of extracting more flavor in other ways. But on the distillation, we are just working with the pot still at this moment.
So, distillery tourism, and you mentioned if you've ever kind of visited the distillery, but distillery tourism in the U.S. is pretty significant business right now. We're seeing kind of a decrease in overall consumption of spirits in the United States, but the tourism to the places that are making this is still kind of an upward trend. What does the tourism look like for you at your distillery? Do you have a lot? Is it kind of a minor business? Like, what's it like?
If we would open again for tourism, I think we would have a lot of visitors again. We used to do it like during weekends, but we didn't have enough people to actually do the tours. Also because it's still a production site, it's quite small. At this, like a few years ago, we decided to keep it for now just closed. But of course, for bartenders and distributors, and we make exceptions. So I get a lot of people from the industry asking me if they can visit. So actually, during weekdays, if there's a moment that is possible, I do some tours. But for the consumers, actually, at this moment, not so much. But I guess it would work. Yeah, for definitely.
So you mentioned giving tours. You work on new product introduction. You have kind of a series of titles. A lot of things, right? You have a lot of things, and if I kind of dive into the things that aren't even specifically Bols related, there's a lot of other things. There's educator roles, there's ambassador roles, things that you do. How do you manage wearing all of these different hats at one time? It feels like a lot.
It sometimes is a lot, but it's not only work for me, it's also the passion. So like my hobby is like kind of like mingled like with my work. It's blending together. So and then if at one point something is too much, I will leave some of the stuff that I do outside of my job. I leave a bit on the side, and then
Yeah, a good work-life balance there.
Yeah.
Living and working in Amsterdam puts you at the center of, history and innovation around things. Does the city influence any of your work in its perspective to spirits as far as flavors or ideas or anything? I feel like it probably has to for most people, but
Yeah, and then especially when I look on Geneva, so not liqueurs, but Geneva, that's still like a local spirit. It's a difficult product sometimes because it's already considered sometimes, especially by young people, as something that your granddad only drank. Like it's not really hip anymore, and so yeah, we were working on those things, and that influences our thoughts as well and our products. And we have actually next to the distillery, we have a tasting room and a shop where we do our local brand, which is don't laugh, wine and fucking.
Sorry. You told me not to laugh, and then I did. That was incredibly
Yeah,
rude.
no, I can imagine. Most Americans laugh anyway.
Right.
But yeah, so we also we can use it as test as well, like because it's local and it's sold and in the hospitality in bars and restaurants in Amsterdam. So we can actually see what happens there and get ideas from that, and also play around a bit with that. Yeah.
Okay, so and you brought this up. What is Geneva?
Geneva, it's it's a local spirit. It's, if you compare it to gin, what most people do, it the same part is actually the juniper berries. So it needs to have juniper berries like gin, but it doesn't have to be the predominant one. So it doesn't have to be the dominant one. So you use also spices, botanicals, and juniper berry has to be there, and it should be noticeable. But that is, of course, a bit subjective. And then the most important difference next to that is that it needs to have malt spirit, so distilled fermented grains. So it's actually, the start is a bit the same like making beer or making whiskey. And that part you really need to have. So it makes it a bit more complex. It makes it more like deep and warm. Yeah, so that's a local spirit. So it's in a way like, well, I say they name it like the grandfather of gin, but yeah, I think it's better, but that's my personal opinion.
And it's always curious to see which one of what regional spirits become global spirits at that point, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
there's nothing to say that bourbon as it's made in Kentucky would have ever become a global spirit. It could have ended up just being a regional
yeah.
spirit. I guess if you had to, would you rather see it be a worldwide spirit where you have 500,000 different versions of it and some of them are really bad and some of them are really good, or do you kind of like that it is a lesser known spirit that you have? Most likely when you have it kind of a lesser known spirit, you have really interesting people working on it, doing kind of fun things with it. I guess if you had to pick the place that you wanted to be, which way do you want to go on it?
Yeah, that's a bit of a difficult question, because of course you want to sell as much as you want, like as much as you can. So you want to have it worldwide. But yeah, if that means that you also have really bad ones, I think that's a side thing then. I would rather, like in person, have only good ones, of course.
Right.
But it would be nice to see it like in more places, and other people can experience it as well, and not only the Dutch people or the Belgian people.
And would you imagine that a thing? And I know we're running down a really esoteric trail here, so you can stop me if you want to. But is Geneva the type of thing that could be made anywhere in the world, or do you think that says, okay, no, it just needs to be made here in this particular region of the world because that's where it was kind of born? Bourbon is United States only. Rum has its rules. Tequila has its rules. Is this a rule specific thing, or is it just here's the recipe, world, make what you can out of it?
No, it actually has how you say, like a demographic, or it has like certain rules. So if you go more specific and you say like we have a young and old, doesn't have to do anything with aging, but I don't know if it's okay to explain now because it gets too much in details maybe.
You can explain anything you want. The people who listen and watch this are nerds, and so they'll be interested.
Okay, well, so you would think, because Geneva can also be aged like whiskey, like bourbon. So people think when you say old Geneva, that's longer aged, and young Geneva is younger aged. Young Geneva actually isn't aged, and it doesn't mean anything of aging. It has to do with the moment that the recipe actually was created. In this case, it was later on, so it's a younger recipe, because back in the days when they started with Geneva, it was even 100% malt spirit with the botanicals. So it's really high in malt spirits. And then because of shortage in grains, also during the war, but also price-wise, vodka came up, so they decided to go. So I was like, okay, this works as well. So maybe we do less malt spirit and more neutral grain alcohol. So things changed. So that's called the young in Geneva because it's a younger recipe. So that means that the malt spirit content in young Geneva is lower, from 1.5% of the alcohol coming from the malt spirit to 15%. And then old Geneva is from 15% of the alcohol coming from the malt spirit till 100%. If you use those two names, actually those two categories on your label, it can only come from the Netherlands or Belgium. Only two. So what used to be the Lage Landen, which means the lowlands, but still used for the Netherlands as well. These two are only possible to make in the Netherlands and in Belgium. If you're using the word Geneva in general, there's actually two other countries or like parts of countries that can be, where it can be made. And that's a part of the above part of France. So against the border of Belgium and a part of Germany.
So, and you mentioned that Geneva can be barrel aged. What kind of is it? Is it unused barrels? Is it used barrels? Like what would it normally go in if you were going to age Geneva, or is it just varied?
Well, it used to, in general, it was always oak barrels, and it was mainly ex-bourbon because that's easy to get. So I think a lot of the European producers actually use ex-bourbon barrels. But we also use a lot of, within Bols, we use a lot of Limousin French oak barrels. And sometimes we actually blend them together. So we have like partly ex-bourbon and then partly Limousin. And that can be like new oak Limousin, or it can be ex-cognac barrels or ex-wine barrels.
And do you have a preference over whether you like the American oak from bourbon or the French oak that comes in from the Limousin?
I actually like the blend the most.
Oh yeah.
Because I think they can all be nice, but I think I like it more if you have a blend, because you have so many influence from the different wood and also the product that has been inside. If you use only French oak like the Limousin, you can have more of the tannins, so you have to be careful that you're not going too much over it. So if you use virgin oak on that, then you have to be really careful. With the bourbon, of course, or American oak, that's less of an issue. So it's easier to work with ex-bourbon barrels or with American oak barrels sometimes than with European oak, and especially French.
Yeah, and I say that as a person, and it may be because I grew up around here. I really like European oak barrels on anything. Anytime I see that, I want to give it a shot because it's a unique flavor profile for us, right? Because we're really used to the American oak that comes out of bourbon, and it's not always the same thing, but it's pretty close, right? It's pretty standard on what it is. And most European oaks, whether it be French or Hungarian or anywhere else, they all have some really distinct changes. I like the idea of what wood does. Now, you mentioned that you use some barrels at Bols as well. What kind of products do you guys have that are barrel aged?
Well, we have the Bols Geneva that's been barrel aged, but that one is not. You cannot compare it to the age of most of the whiskeys, I think. Geneva, you have to age for a minimum of 1 year, so that's already different. So we do. I think at this point we're minimum of 2 years at this point for the barrel aged Geneva. And in our local portfolio, we actually had a corn wine, which is a kind of Geneva, which we had a 2 year, a 6 year, and an 10 year. Sorry, 11 is in the wine and fucking portfolio. And the 6 year was actually the blend that I just mentioned. So it's actually both the ex-bourbon and the Limousin. So we have those in our warehouses a lot still.
So, kind of shifting gears just a little bit.
Yeah.
When you look at, and maybe you do, I don't know. When I look at kind of the younger generation of folks that are interesting in entering the spirits industry now, do you see any kind of knowledge gaps or skill gaps that folks should be focused on as they kind of enter into that, and the people that you're working with?
Well, in general, I don't know about the ones that actually did do like any education on that part, because then you have of course already like a different knowledge. But I noticed it's not easy to find those people. the people that we get and that are interested, they have like a kind of like almost over romantic. It's a romantic job, it is, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also a lot of physical, heavy lifting, pumping stuff in the stills. And I think people overlook, so, and you miss like the perseverance, like to be like, and also the physical like labor that they sometimes don't want to do, that they
Mm-hmm.
think, okay, this generation doesn't want to work hard, they just want to be interesting,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And this maybe a bit um
No. You're.
dangerous.
I think you're spot on, and distilling and making a spirit is it. You're right. It does sound very, very romantic, but what isn't romantic is whenever you're having to scrub out the inside of a still because you want to put something else in it, or you're having to clean out hoses, or you're literally doing one of the other, kind of 500 to 1,000 jobs that are really just industrial jobs
Yeah.
that lead to the romantic part, which is building the blend or having the bottle or doing the tasting or the sensory portion of it or telling people about it. There's a lot of it that is not. There's a lot of it's just a factory job, and I don't say that sounds diminutive. It's not, but there's a lot of industrial process that kind of goes into making these things, which is tremendous, right? And you're right. Like there's a degree of perseverance, and I've never met a person who's gotten into the kind of the higher levels of distilling that hasn't said something along the lines of, if I'd have known how hard it was when I started, I might not have ever done it. Or sometimes you've got to be, too stupid to quit, or whatever you want to call it, right? Like you just kind of have a little bit of stubbornness that's baked into who you are to kind of persevere through a lot of these things. The House of Bowls specifically is as much about experience and alcohol and tasting and flavors as it is education. And you kind of mentioned perseverance is one part of it, but educating is not just for the employees, it's also for the consumers. How important do you think it is for spirits brands to offer experiences to educate consumers as well?
Yeah, personally, I think it's a good thing, and not just because we have this, experience and those kind of things, and even like consumers can do bartender trainings or like those kind of things, cocktail training. Um, I think it's good because some people don't know how much work goes into it. They don't know the history. They don't know anything about the products itself. So I think it's a good thing to educate people in general.
And then a couple last questions, and then I'll let you go because I know you've probably got other things to do, and it's getting near the end of your day, I'm sure. Um, as you measure success personally in your role, do you look at it from sales numbers? Do you look at industry recognition, innovation, or is it something else that kind of builds out, like you put your stamp on and say, this is success?
I think it's a combination of all of those, but that's maybe an easy answer. But I think that's the part, because if I'm not selling any products,
Mm-hmm.
I can make something really nice that I'm really that have some people that say, "Oh my God, Monique, this is so good," and it doesn't sell. That doesn't help either.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, to see a product that you put all your passion in and that you worked hard on, and especially also with a team, with your distillery team or the innovation team, I think it's really, really, nice and rewarding to see it's being sold really well or perceived at least well. Yeah. So I think being able, one, to make a product that you're really happy about,
Mm-hmm.
and then seeing it being sold really well, of course. Yeah.
And then this will be the last one, I promise. And thank you for kind of
That's
sticking with
fine.
me on this. You and we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I want to kind of come back to this maybe to put the keystone on it, or the capstone on it. You're working for a 450-year-old company. Do you ever find yourself thinking about the legacy that you're building for the next generation of distillers? Because if it's been around for 450 years, it's likely to be around for a lot longer after that.
I I never thought about it that often, actually, but you're right. Yeah, yeah, of course. Like, I hope it will like continue on for a long, long time. I know that I will, for as long as I can, to be part of it.
And and a reason I ask that, it's a lot of my listeners are based in the U.S., right? And the United States is 249 years old. This brand is twice as old.
Yeah,
Almost, but pretty close to twice as old, just as a consumer brand, right? That's a huge thing, and to be kind of tapped on the shoulder and said you're going to be kind of the head of this going forward is an immense accomplishment, and it says a lot about the quality of the things that you've done over the course of your career, Monique. So, like I said earlier, thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time today. We can never make more time. We can make more money. We can make a whole lot of things, but we can't make more time. And you've given some to me, so I'm greatly appreciative. And thank you for hopping on.
thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning into this episode from the Embellish Pod. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a review on whatever platform you're consuming this on and leave a comment if at all possible. Hit me up on social media on TikTok or Instagram using Embellish Pod, and you can give me a follow so you can keep up with what's going on here. I can be found at www.embellishpod.com with all of my links, accounts, and contact details. Thanks for stopping by. All right. Can you see it say recording now? Okay. And well, I didn't ask this beforehand. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your last name. So when you get a chance, if you want to, you can go for that. I can hopefully get the first name, but the last name, I'm not going to destroy that with my Western Kentucky accent. I promise.